Joining us now from Washington, D.C., Kevin Hassett, the former chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors under President Trump. So he worked on economic issues. Were you there all 4 years of Trump? How long were you there?
Almost all 4 years. I left in the summer and then I went back for COVID. So I was only gone for 6 months of the 4 years.
I have some bullet questions. So in the 4 years of Trump, no inflation, right?
Correct.
Why?
Basically, supply and demand kept up with each other. Trump had supply-side tax cuts and deregulation, and that meant that there were lots of new businesses, small businesses, new factories brought back to the U.S., and so there was plenty of supply. And when there's plenty of supply, then the suppliers compete for your demand, and that keeps the prices low. What Biden's
that
done
makes
is
sense
he's
to me.
declared war.
Right.
Excuse
I
me?
understood that, Kevin. Don't outkick your coverage here. Just keep it in my zone. I understand that.
Come on.
Okay. More competition for products, drive prices down. I got it. Okay. That's number one. Number two, under Trump, the Fed was printing money like crazy because we were spending money. Donald Trump is a big spender on the military and other things. Okay. So the Fed was printing a lot of money, but inflation still didn't go up. Same reason, supply and demand?
There's a big difference between that, and I promise not to kick it more than 45 yards on this one. But what's basically happened since Biden's been in office is that he's been printing checks and mailing them to people, and the Fed has been financing that. And so it's like you're dropping cash from a helicopter onto the economy. And when you do that, then prices go up because everybody's got more money in their pockets. When Trump was doing it, remember, because of Fauci, unfortunately, the economy was shut down. So people didn't necessarily have a paycheck. And so when the government mailed them money, it was just filling a hole. And so Trump filled the hole. Biden gave you money even though the hole was filled and you were back to normal. And so that's when the helicopter drop happened and inflation got out of control.
Okay. Now, do you believe that Joe Biden understands the last two answers you gave me? Does he have any idea about macroeconomics?
No, I don't think he does.
How about the people around him?
He doesn't really have a macroeconomist in his team except for Janet Yellen. And I think that Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, I'd love to see Bill O'Reilly read some of her writings and then talk about it, because it feels like she's been, rehashing Democratic talking points rather than giving sound economic advice. And that's one of the reasons we're in this mess.
Well, he won't even acknowledge the rise in gasoline, about the simplest economic equation we can give the folks, of more than $1 in his first year without Putin. Okay, so I mean, is he going to blame COVID for that when Trump had that too? And there was plenty of supply of oil when Biden took over, right? You guys were, the supply of oil and gas and everything was about right up to here when Trump left office. But as soon as Biden came in and slapped all the regulations on the industry, the supply went down, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Bill. And the other thing is, having been in the Oval with President Trump and in the Situation Room and everything, one of the things that Biden has said that annoys me the most and angers me the most is he's kind of like saying, look, it's not my fault, it's Putin's fault because he went into Ukraine. But Putin went into Ukraine because Biden is so weak. And so even if you take the Putin argument, then you should still say it's Biden's fault, because there's no way if Trump was in the White House that Putin would have gone into Ukraine.
But Mr. Hassett, I have to point out that's your opinion. That's not a provable fact, okay?
That's true.
Now, I hold the same opinion that you do, but I can't put it forth as fact because Putin, I think, is unstable. I don't think I don't think Putin's going to come out of this very well, but that's another opinion. But I want to stay in the factual zone here, because what Biden is telling the world and the American people is, hey, I'm going to have no responsibility for this bad economy here. I don't have any responsibility for the rise in gas and food prices. And that is a factual lie. It's just a lie.
Right. You're right about that. And it's the same thing that President Obama did. You might recall they told us when the economy was terrible that it's the new normal. They use these fancy words, secular stagnation, but they said it's the new normal. The economy can't grow fast ever again, and it's not our fault. And so once again, we have Democrats in the White House, and the economy's not doing so well, and they're once again claiming it's not their fault. But at some point, that pattern, I think, will be recognizable to citizens, and they'll do something about it.
And here's my most important question of the week, I think, not just the night. So I think there's going to be a recession as companies now are feeling the pain because they have higher costs across the board, including higher salaries, because the workforce is shaky. There aren't enough employees. We're looking for people at BillO'Reilly.com now, editorial people. I mean, it's not easy to find them. So if you have to spend more money on employees, on products, then you got to cut someplace else. So do you think there's going to be a recession?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a recession, and I think it's going to happen because the Fed isn't going to control inflation with the tiny little interest rate hikes that it's going to give us over the next 5 or 6 months, and that they're going to have to really whack the economy. And so the summer might be a little early, but by next January, sadly, I think that we're likely to have a recession. And here's a couple of things that are facts, not opinion, Bill, to stick on the table. Fact one is if you look at what's happening at the gas pump and at the grocery store, then in March, when we get the inflation numbers for March, they're going to be like maybe up about 2% or up about 20% at an annual rate. And so it's going to be the highest inflation that we've seen any time in the post-war period for March. And so with inflation that high, there's an enormous amount of pressure on the Fed to do something. But the only thing they can do is to raise interest rates. And the history of this is that inflation doesn't start going down until the interest rate is higher than the inflation rate. That's like a very regular pattern in the data. Again, that's just the truth. There's no way the Fed's going to lift the interest rate to 10%. But until they do, inflation's going to stay a serious problem.
That's really depressing.
I'm sorry.
It really is depressing because, I mean, a lot of Americans, they don't have a lot of reserves. And the only good news is that Biden and the Democratic Party are going to get their butts kicked in November. It has to happen. I mean, Americans are just going to go, enough. We don't care who it is. We don't want you. And I think that will happen. And that might actually help the price stability and the economy if the Republicans get in a position of power in Washington. Final question. If you are right and a recession kicks in, so America then becomes weakened on the world stage because the stronger our economy is, the stronger our nation is. And so where do we find optimism here? Okay, where do we, the people, find optimism? Obviously, 80 million people voted for Joe Biden. They all, every single one of them, made a mistake in doing that. All right, but now we have to recover. Can we recover quickly?
Right. Bill, I hope I can come back and we can talk for a long time about this. But briefly, what I can say is people need to know that this is an easy problem to fix if you understand it. You understand it. I understand it. If there was somebody in Congress and in the White House that knew how to, what to do, which is like be friendly to supply, be friendly to small business, increase supply. If you do all that, then you can get ahead of the curve on inflation without causing a recession. And the last thing I want to say, just because I know that there are a lot of people that are watching that might be worried about this, is that people on Social Security, people on fixed incomes, thank goodness those checks are adjusted for inflation. So I know that there's a lot of pain from the inflation, but our senior citizens on fixed incomes getting Social Security, their checks are going to go up because of this inflation rate. And so, they shouldn't panic about it. That's
nobody
one good
should
thing
panic.
about policy.
Real quick, would you suspend the federal gas tax now to give people immediately relief?
That's not my first thing, but I would do that. Yeah, the first thing I would do is basically allow. Right now, ships aren't allowed to move U.S. oil from city to city within the U.S. because of this crazy thing called the Jones Act. So the first thing I would do is let Americans buy U.S. energy and try to expand U.S. energy. That'd have a big positive effect.
Yeah, just take all the regulations for 6 months off this insane attempt to get us off fossil fuels. That's a given. But I don't know why Biden's not dropping that federal gas tax. I mean, that would do him good if he did it. But again, I think you're correct in the top of the interview by saying he doesn't know what the deuce is going on. And that's really depressing. Mr. Hassett, we'll definitely have you back. In fact, I'm going to anoint you our go-to economic guy. It was very good. And if I can understand it, then I know you did your job well. And thanks for helping us out. We appreciate it.
Thanks. It's an honor to be here.